Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and it's a great privilege today to be with Robert Potter and Lowell Johnson. And we're going to take an unusual journey today to an interdimension, Inner Earth, Agartha, through Robert to Lowell, who has journeyed to Inner Earth to Agartha. So Robert, could you please open the way for us here?
Well, I want to first say thank you for coming on, and Lowell, I want to thank you for your openness and willingness to share your experiences with Alfred's audience today.
Happy to do that. This experience wasn't supposed to be just for me. It's supposed to be a message for the rest of humanity.
It really is, I think, folks. I'm going to give a little background to my meeting with Lowell so you can understand. And as you can see, is an absolutely regular person. And I look for the truth pretty heavily. I seek it out, and I'm sorry, I got a little beeping there. Is that too annoying? Can you hear the sound, Alfred?
Yeah, but just speak through it. I mean,
okay. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. You'll have to edit that little part out. Just a second here. Yuki. You got to close the door. I'm on a call here.
I guess this is part of the electronic frontier.
There you go.
Sorry, she opened the door and it set off the smoke alarm there. I apologize. Kind of.
Oh, I see. No,
all right.
No, that's fine.
So, I don't know. Do you want to start over? Or do you want to edit?
No. Great. This is all flow. Please continue.
All right. So, all right. Well, I'd like to start off by telling you how I got introduced to Lowell. A friend of mine told me there was a rumor going around that a guy had gone into the Inner Earth here in Mount Shasta. And I was really interested. I'm always seeking truth, but this was a particularly, something in me just said, really pay attention to this one. And I said, well, when did this happen? They said just a couple of months ago. And so I looked at it pretty closely in my heart, and I felt it was something that I should pursue. So I found out that he was on Facebook, and his name was Lowell Thomas. And I immediately began to messenger him and see about meeting him, because it was before my conference in Mount Shasta. So I was thinking, I had some people with COVID-related problems with family allowing them to come, and I thought I would replace him for my Mount Shasta summer conference. And it turns out he couldn't make it because of some fires and stuff, but I ended up talking to him for several hours. It was just quite fascinating. And one of the things I want to say for people who are skeptical of this type of thing, I'm going to say, I'd like you to open your minds a little bit. One of the remarkable things, and this is just my opinion of my interaction with Lowell, he is a very normal person. He was not seeking this experience. He's not an expert on the Inner Earth. He's not a metaphysical personality in the public. He's an extraordinary human with a certain, I'd have to say, vibrational quality from my understanding of how these things take place, and his explanation of it is that in one point they said, we think you will remember it. They knew his family, they knew him. He was chosen, and I believe he was guided to this very place at this very point in time to have this experience and to reveal it to the world. And so for me, I look for signals, and I found no deception. I just found a sincere, honest, and a nice gentleman who was very open and happy to share his amazing experience. And in the course of my conversations with him, I've known several things. There was a girl named Bonnie, and you could look it up under YouTube under Sharula Dux, Sharula-Dux. And she came out years ago, I think in the early 80s, with a story that she was from the Inner Earth. And she appeared in Mount Shasta, and she gave some conferences, and she told her story. Before this, she went to a very famous UFO researcher I knew when I was a young kid in my 1920. His name was Bill Hamilton. He was a famous UFO researcher, and she ended up meeting him and another guy who was at a conference you were on previously with me, Alfred. You had to do a remote presentation as you did this year. But his name was Michael L. Legion, and Michael L. Legion met Bill Hamilton and had the meeting with Bonnie from the Inner Earth, and she had blonde hair, and she revealed her real name was Sharula Dux, and she was told a story, and it's in a 12-part series that you can find on YouTube, and her descriptions really rang true to me, and I really tuned into that story. And one of the things that he told me about that I knew absolutely that it's true, and he had never heard of Sharula, was that there is something called the living stone. When he takes you on this wonderful journey that he experienced, there is a large pyramid that is probably the focal point of the main area. I've never been there, so Lowell will tell us about that. But there's what's called the living stone. And the living stone is a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid is this living stone. It's like a capstone. And this capstone will change colors with the frequencies of the day or the galactic energies, so that the people are in harmony with the vibrations of the universe, kind of like an astrology, a living astrology that might indicate this is a good time for meditation. This might be a good time for health, for exercise, for mental activity or spiritual activity. I don't know all the colors and frequencies or exactly what that would mean, but he mentioned this and talked about it, and I knew right away that my intuition was correct, and I should really pay attention to Lowell. I think there's so many things that we judge and misunderstand that to have someone have a face-to-face encounter, a real experience, was something that I'm really drawn to, because I want to hear it from a person who have their own experiences, his own perceptions, whatever he felt. But my sense and my endorsement is that Lowell's absolutely honest. He's I want to say a bright, intelligent, open, honest person. And I think you're going to enjoy this conversation with him as he takes you on this journey. So that was my experience and my understanding. And then his experience will unfold here as he tells his perceptions and what happened. And Alfred, please do, if you have any question about something, maybe just raise your hand. Lowell can keep an eye up, and you can ask questions if you want. You can ask my opinion, but I'd like Lowell to give his experience, and if he wants anything, if he wants to take questions or something, say, do you have any questions, you can just ask us. But I think, I guess we should start to let you tell your wonderful experience, Lowell. I guess he was going through some changes in his life. He can talk about that. And then he found himself in the upper parking lot in Mount Shasta. So once again, thank you for coming on, Lowell, and we'll be happy to hear your story.
Thanks. I'm happy to share. Maybe it might do us some good for me to kind of talk about what led up to this event, and without going back and talking about my spiritual journey, which is over 4 years long. I just want to talk about this particular instance. And, you know, during the time that we were all locked down with COVID, I had actually been on an assignment in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, had intended to move to Las Vegas and do some consulting work. I've been a hospitality professional for all my life. And before I was going to make that transition, my son, who's here in Santa Rosa, I thought I'd go and spend a couple of weeks with him before, you know, I moved everything to Nevada. I was there for about a week before COVID exploded onto the scene and everybody was on lockdown. So for the next few months, I was there spending time with my son while the rest of the world kind of figured out what was going to go on. But then when we got to July and those arrangements relaxed a little bit, I was just hungry to get back to nature. That's where I find my peace and solace, is to go spend time maybe on the Pacific coast. Love to do that. Just roll down the windows and let the sea breeze blow through your car. There's plenty of wonderful wooded areas in Sonoma County. There's every type of geography that you want to experience is here. And I always get self-satisfaction and nourishment out of spending time in those areas. So when there was an opportunity maybe to go somewhere else, I had thought about spending some time in some of the national parks. And the first place I had in mind was to head to the Southwest and kind of go to the Four Corners areas. There's so many wonderful places there with Zion and Valley of the Fire and the Grand Canyon, and lots of opportunities with arches and places to go visit that I thought I would head there. And when I started to do my research, I was beginning to understand that many of these places were not open and available. So for some reason, the next impulse I had was to go to Mount Shasta. Now, I'd been in that area before, but I hadn't spent any significant time. So I thought this way I would stay in California. I would go to some places where, you know, when it gets really hot, you just head for either coastline or some higher elevations to kind of mitigate the temperatures. And I thought it sounded like a good idea. Never mind that I was drawn there for purposes beyond me, and I was supposed to go there. So the intent was I was going to head to Mount Shasta for a week. My son and I were going to then meet in Tahoe and, you know, spend a little time there together and enjoy nature. 1 week in Shasta ended up rolling into another and another and another. In the end, I was there for almost 6 weeks, just absorbing the energy in that area. Now, I understand that there is unique energy to that entire area. It's tangible. I can feel it. I hiked every day, and I'm not a young man anymore. These are things that I would have done, you know, 20 or 30 years ago. But each day I would start out where I should have been sore from the hike before, I was not. So there is an energy that affects our physical beings that I experienced in real time there. That was amazing. The times that you would meditate, it would feel like if you were grounded and you had your feet on the ground. It felt like there was almost a magnetic catch, that they didn't feel heavier. You just felt that connected to, you know, the Earth's surface. So anyway, I had spent this particular Friday that led up to the day that I ended up having my experience in Telos, that I had spent a morning in Mount Shasta seeing a place called the Peace Garden, which was a wonderful experience. when that was finished, I had decided that I would figure out what I was going to do next and maybe think through the next few days. I'd spent a significant amount of time up on the Panther Meadows lot, up kind of at the top of Mount Shasta. So if you know where the old ski bowl is, that's where this place is. It's pretty much as high as you could drive. And I enjoyed a lot of time there. So I got there a little before noon on this Friday, thinking about what I was going to do for the next few days. And as I found an empty picnic table, I had sat back where I could now see Shasta was directly in front of me, and Shastina, which is its little sister mountain, was there to the left. It's now right about noon, and so the shadows from the sun getting on the other side of Shastina were starting to cast in a way that it almost appeared as though there were some sections along Shastina that could have been cave entrances. It's certainly been said that there are cave entrances that people could find, and I'm under the impression that people have spent considerable time seeking these places out with little or no success. But they were curious enough for me that I thought I would look them out. I mean, I grew up along the Mississippi River in St. Paul, and there were caves there. And, me and my friends would find our way down there and have our little parties. And so it wasn't unusual to find that type of circumstance. So that was Friday. I didn't intend to do it that day because whatever was going to unfold, I just wanted to allow enough time to do that. And so I decided that the next day I was going to visit Black Butte, which is another mountain just to, I guess that would be to the west of Mount Shasta. If you're driving up I-5, you drive right by this thing and it looks like the black top of a huge quartz crystal.
It's a little volcano cone. It's a little bit north of the main highway there and to the west.
Yes, amazing. So I decided that I was going to make this hike. There was a way to get all the way to the peak and see the views from there. I didn't really pay much attention to people that had been there before and their accounts of how steep and rocky, and a couple places had been washed out. So honestly, there were 2 times that I decided I was going to go back and press forward. But I told you that story to tell you this one. It took me 6 hours to make that. And by the time I got back to my room, I was never so happy to see the car in the parking lot. I went back to my room and just rested for the evening, and like by 6:15, I was done. So the next morning, it's just regular for me to get up around 7 and meditate immediately and then, continue the rest of my day. I had already Saturday night, decided that I wasn't going to do anything but just chill out in bed, take the day, recover a little bit. But after meditation, when I'd laid back down to recover a little bit more, it got to be about mid-morning and something just said, look, get up and let's go see it. You can see where you want to go. So we know it's going to take maybe 20 or 25 minutes to hike to that spot. And let's just go see. So I can't explain what drives people, much less myself. But that was the motivation for it that day. So I got up, got dressed, took the things that I needed to go on a regular hike, and I made my way to Panther Meadows. So by the time I got there, it was right around noon again. Parked in the lot, and it's a Sunday, so there were families and lots of people there. The trails that most people follow from Panther Meadows goes kind of straight up toward Mount Shasta, and then there's some beautiful valleys with streams off to the right-hand side. But where I was going, you could see that there was a trail that led off to the left toward Shastina. And once you followed that path around, which kind of circled it, there was going to be a place where I would have to begin to hike, off trail and just kind of follow a line as the crow flies to this area that I had in mind. So I made my way from the vehicle. I'd taken a couple photographs from the car so that I could remember what direction I was going to be heading in. And I had some kind of documentation of where I was going to be headed. Now, let me stop here for a moment and say that although I had done research because I've got an interest in Atlantis and that's been there for a while, I had done plenty of research learning what I could about everything that happened back then. And it's just a natural course of study when you're learning that you tend to understand about Lemuria and Mu and all of those things as well, because there's interconnectedness between those two civilizations. So I had an awareness of them, but I had no idea about this. I'd certainly heard legends that, you know, people lived in Telos there, but I was more thinking that if I was going to have some type of spiritual engagement, it may have been with the likes of, say, Saint Germain, which is certainly no fairy tale. That had actually happened there. So ascended masters are there in the area. And I thought, well, it'd be great if that would happen to me. It didn't yet, but that's what I had in my mind. So anyway, I made this trip towards Shasta and then started to climb up the mountain to these areas that looked like they could have been little mini vortexes. And to me, they're identified by kind of a circular rock formation with some trees. There were a couple of places that actually met those criteria. So I had stopped in one and just kind of got a feel for it. And you could feel that the energy had changed a little bit. And while I got settled there, then there was another one a little up and left to me. And I visited that one. And then there was one more that was almost right against the face of Shasta. And in it, there were 3 rocks that kind of came out in an encirclement. They were pretty good sized rocks, except the one on the left-hand side was kind of narrow. Now it was about crotch high for me, so I could get up and over it. And once I did, there was an area maybe 10 feet where there was a little bit of space to enjoy. So I thought, well, this is as good a place as any, and I'll sit here and meditate. And so when I sat facing the parking lot, I had leaned back and there's an overgrowth of brush against the mountain. Solid surface, I put my back against it, stretched my feet out in front of me. And so I took another picture from there. I had some water and I had some grapes. I meditated for just a few minutes. And then I had been listening to music in my ears, in my AirPods. That just stopped. So I put the water and my grapes away, and I reached in my back pocket because that's where I had my iPhone. I pulled it out, and there's no power. So as I'm trying to fire it up again, I got my finger on the power button. It appears as though there's a shadow that seems to be coming from over me and kind of along where my legs were, almost as though the sun had accelerated a little bit, and like there's this canopy coming over me. Almost instantly, I feel cool air coming from behind me. And when I turn around to take note of the changes in my environment, there's now a hole behind me. It's probably a foot taller than I am and rounded out, and there's still sun behind me. So I'm trying to make out what this is. I stand up and there's a little grade that kind of goes up before it goes down on the other side. When my eyes adjust enough, I can see probably 10 yards down, and on the left-hand side of this opening, there seemed to be somebody. If I was to guess, I would say that this person was about my height. And then I heard somebody say, "Do you wish to see Telos?" And I, with half anxiety and half excitement, I said yes. And so I made my way up, started to walk down. And as I got closer to this person and my eyes adjusted from the light, I could tell he was not my size. This guy's at least a foot taller than I am. Long blonde hair, handsome in a way that's just like ageless. So matured, but none of the signs that our poor little, human bodies have when aging kicks in, and crow's feet, and the likes of which. As I got close to him, he had on a white apparel, but he had what appeared to be like colored ribbons. So I couldn't tell if that was the way that you bling up an outfit like that, or there was some significance to those colors. But anyway, he had said, my name is Alex. I said, you can call me Alex. And I said, well, that'll be easy. That's my son's name. He goes, yes, we know who your son is. And so he then indicated, follow me. And so we followed this path. It was almost like one of the volcanic tubes, and we had made our way down to what I could see at the bottom of wherever this took us. You could see there was a light source. And as I got closer to the bottom, trying to take it in, when I looked behind me, whatever opening had opened up for me, I could no longer see any light coming from there. When we got to the bottom, it opened up into a fairly spacious area. And there were volcanic tubes, 5 of them, that went from this little station. When we got to the opening of the entry area to this, I looked to my left, immediately to the left, and there was a platform that was approximately 6 foot by 6 foot, with what appeared to be, and I could only characterize it as like 2 bucket seats. A little further to the left and a little further to the right, there was another one of these. So there were 3 of them in total. And Alex crawled into one of the seats on this one sitting next to us and indicated for me to get in the other one. And as soon as I sat down, it levitated. And we began to move through that center tube. Now, there's no console, there's no steering wheel, and it didn't feel, even though we were moving, it didn't feel like we were moving anywhere. This was not a meditative journey for me. I was totally boots on the ground here, but I wasn't saying much just because I wanted to take it all in. As we were going through this tube, as we got closer to the end where you can now see some other light coming, you could tell that there were crystals embedded into the walls there. And as you went through and your physical perspective changed, so did the colors and the crystals. And it was like going through a living kaleidoscope. It was amazing. Once we got to the area that was lit and opened up, now we're in what turned out to be level 1 of the city of Telos, which has 5 levels. It's just massive. So if envision a view of a cityscape, we were able to levitate enough up like that to have that type of perspective looking out over the city.
You said some things here I wanted to share with the audience, and maybe Alfred has a question at this point, but one of the things you had mentioned to me before, and my friend Louis Martens, who's been inside the Inner Earth network as you, he met and went down and was actually guided there to a position and stuff. He said it's kind of interdimensional. And one of the things that I wanted to, that you had mentioned before that I think you maybe can share a little bit was about the lighting, because you said there was no sun, there was nothing, and yet you were able to see. If you could, now you're talking about the colors and stuff, maybe share a little bit about with the audience about that. I think there was something that you kind of, I think you were chosen because you were able to make this dimensional shift into a higher frequency that you've been prepared for. But that's just my speculation that it's kind of another dimensional thing. But share a little bit about that, the lighting thing. And just for those of you who don't know, the way the car went was telepathically. It was guided by they have an interaction, the technology, the extraterrestrials and the Inner Earth people. They don't need wheels or anything. Everything's guided by their thoughts and their
Yeah, it
mind.
was telepathic. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The light was kind of like, that was the second thought. Once we got to the place where you could oversee the city and see these crystal buildings around that pyramid that you had mentioned before with the capstone on top of it, it was just remarkable. It was then when you start to take all that in that you started to look up, and whatever the dome of this area was, I can't even begin to understand how far that was, how much space that was. But what occurred to me is there was no skylights. There's no sunlight that's coming in here. And yet it was lit up like it was a bright sunny day outside. So I had questions about what created that light source, because it just radiated the place. It was crazy. Crystal buildings all around it. It was just like something that you would have seen in a fairy tale. But these crystals were of amazing different colors. And what I thought I recognized, you got to see Andara crystals, which is indicative to that area, that I am a fan of quartz crystals. There was lots of construction that was done with that. And as much as we here on the surface value gold and silver and precious metals like that, they use those things just for accent. Everything was drawn around crystals. And I suspect that was just because of the energy that they emit. And I'll talk about physical energies when we get to kind of the last part of this. So as we were kind of hovering over this and taking it all in, we would drop enough so that I could start to see, there were people everywhere there. And when I would make eye contact with those that I could, it just felt like nothing needed to be said, that I knew them and they knew who I was. So I'm not sure, other than the sense of, a law of one and fifth dimensional kind of mentality, that we are all connected in a way that should make telepathy and communication like that more viable. And I'm a believer that it's coming, and it's coming soon. I'm pretty sure that those are some of the reasons that they knew about me, on the reasons why I was chosen to go. We then found ourselves on the third level. He began to explain what the 5 different levels in Telos was. And the first one is mainly where the population lives. It has been suggested that there's about 1.5 million people that live in Telos. I have no way of, I hadn't been told that by any of the people that I met with that day, but it would certainly make sense. If you follow the history of Lemuria and what had happened during the Great Flood, and when they found themselves in there, that 25 or 26,000 of them found their way to the mountain, whenever Lemuria finally went under in the Pacific. And so it would be consistent with what I think.
Lowell, can I ask you, you talk to me, because I wanted you to maybe share a little bit about the size and the area that's there, so people can grasp the magnet, and maybe a little more description of what it was looking like inside there.
Oh, yes. Now that we have a little bit of an hour, we can spend a little more time on the details. It's been said that Telos occupies a space that's 25 miles in size. the first level were areas where the population lived. There were many temples there. The administrative parts of Telos are all there. And then the second level, which I didn't visit, is more administrative, some manufacturing, and some additional housing where the Lemurians live. The third level, which I did get to see, was all about hydroponics. Probably 7 acres that we hovered over of everything that feeds their entire population. Nobody worries about what they're going to eat. No one worries about what they're going to live. Those things are already provided for every citizen there. So their immediate needs are being met. The hydroponic part of it was amazing, thinking that between the crystal technology that they took advantage of and the way that they grew their crops without any types of pesticides like we do, everything is organic. Everybody is a vegetarian, and these crops rotate in such a way that they roll themselves over so quickly that there's enough food in that area to feed their entire population multiple times a day. The fourth level was additional manufacturing, some schooling in whatever form that takes, and then some parks. I can't think of another way to explain what he had told me. The area that I wished I would have seen, had that been an opportunity for me, was how he explained the fifth level. And it's like a giant park, that there are plants, flora and fauna, and even animals that used to reside on the surface that have not seen the surface since then, and that humanity has not seen since the fall of Lemuria. But there's going to be an opportunity for those things to be, seen and witnessed again, and the time is coming soon. There was a point to my visit, and we'll get to that soon. Robert asked me to think a little bit more about the details on what I had seen on level 1, and now that we've got a little more time, I will talk about it. The city is almost based kind of in a circular fashion, and that pyramid temple is right in the middle of with the capstone. I have heard that the capstone changes color. I can only confirm that the day that I was there, it was white, and whether it changed or not, it didn't happen on my watch that day, but I'm under the impression that it does in a way that Robert had explained. These buildings—
You said it was the living stone. Did they call it that?
They called the capstone the living stone.
Right. Okay. They did call it that. And
yes.
And
that was a gift from the Venusians.
Right, there you go. So one of the other things I wanted you to mention is maybe give us the time. And one of the things about Lowell is that he was taking this all in. He wasn't asking questions, because I was like, oh my God, what about this? And did you ask that? And he has a very observant personality, and he something in him realized he should just observe and didn't ask too many questions. But can you share anything else that Alex might have told you or commented to you as you went through this? And of course, talk about the top level, what a little more details in your description.
He was a kind of a gracious tour guide, but this was meant to be an abbreviated tour. Now that I've had time to assimilate what had ever happened, and man, I think about what happened there every day, there are things that just occur to you to put into perspective that civilization. The latest one is my son bought a new house, and so we're painting. And so this would happen actually yesterday. I was on one of those little step ladders so I could reach the peak in the room, and these are 10-foot ceilings. And when I got up on the second step, realizing that my head is probably equal 8 foot for some reason in my head, it just said, this is what their perspective looks like when an 8-foot person gets to look down on everybody else. Let me go back to the city a little bit. I have an appreciation for crystals and the energy that they have. I have much more labradite than anybody should probably have, and I have some Andara crystals, and I actually found some when I was there in Mount Shasta. Yes, there you go. You know, as bright as the wonderful colors of them are, I happened to go to a shop while I was there and met with Bev. And when I first saw, she has 8 different rooms of crystals in the crystal shop. And when you got to the back room and you saw what they had for Andara crystals, I thought, well, there's not very much representation here. And so that was the first day, and the shop was busy. So I went back 2 days later to kind of take it in again, because if there's a crystal shop in town, I'm going to go see it. And on my way out, I ran into her and I said, I'm kind of surprised you wouldn't have more Andara crystals here. And she said, oh, you know, we got tons of that stuff, but it's all down in the basement. But somebody else had asked today too. So if you want to come back at 6 o'clock today, I will take you down there and you can go through and see what I've got. I won't go into Andara crystals, but it's a monatomic crystal with qualities that no other stone crystal like it has. I can understand why it has a much more high vibration quality about it because of what these things do. But when we went down to take a look at it, and she called it the Shire, she had shelf upon shelf upon shelf upon shelf of these Andara crystals that had come from Lady Nellie's land, if you know who Lady Nellie is and where Andara crystals were first found in that area. She showed me one, and there was a reason I'm telling you this story, and she called it root beer. Well, I'd seen bright blue ones, and I happen to possess one. There's lots of lime green ones. They come in a variety of colors, but this one looked brown. And when you look closely at it, there were some striations in the inside that almost looked like there were little lights inside of it. She had a few pieces of that. And in the end, I bought one of those. It's kind of shaped in a wedge and it's just beautiful. But I remember seeing, when I talk about the Crystal City, the Crystal City was all different colors. And there were some of those buildings that were made out of this root beer colored Andara crystal, and it's just fabulous. How it was done in the way that it's done, you know, I don't know. Once I maintain full on 5th dimensional awareness, maybe I'll be able to understand the process enough so that I can articulate it to others. But it was just magnificent.
They look like they're. Some people speculate they're like a volcanic glass, but they have really a glass-like quality to them.
Yes, that's correct. But there is one difference. You know, I bought a piece a few years ago and found out that it was in fact a piece of glass, and it wasn't what it led up to be. I had read along the way about a time when it was initially found on Lady Nellie's land, on that there was always like a white powder in the area that you would find. Now, whether they call it Ethereum or whatever it is, now I understand it. One of the days that I was up hiking, I had my crystals with me, and there were some people that had kind of come along the way, and I dropped one of them. And I chipped off part of it. And when I picked it up, guess what? Here's that white powder that everybody's talking about. You could see it in the flaw that was made when I dropped the crystal. So I knew that what I had was a legitimate Andara crystal. I'm not suggesting anybody crack your crystals to find out whether they're legit, but in my case, that's how I found out that I had some authentic stuff, and it just tied to the construction of the things that I saw in Telos.
Oh, okay.
So do you want to stop and ask a couple questions along the way?
Alfred, please. Alfred, you're muted. if you want to ask some questions, would you like to, or?
Well, this is all very new to me, and it's different from the inner earth that I experienced in Bulgaria, which, as I understand, was set up resulting from some of the tribes that, from some of the tribes that had
Sorry about that.
yeah, today has been that kind of day. That had been from some of the tribes that had gone down in there, and there's a line of kings that rule over these tribes and this civilization, where the entry is in the Bulgaria, Romania area, and or at least these are what the people who come out of that area say, and I'm referring to people who've written books coming out of that area, and people who I've interviewed coming out of that area. And this area, what struck me a great deal about what you said was the technological aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much so that I wanted to ask whether that wasn't, it was technological, whether or not that was part of the deep underground military bases. That was, I said, oh, is that part of deep underground military bases? Because it was technological, and there are, you see so many photographs of those sort of large tunnel builders that build the deep underground military bases. And so that was one of my first questions, was what are the people down there like? If you could go into what the civilization is like and what they say their origin is.
Well, I'll try my best to answer that. I didn't have a lot of interaction with just anybody that was there. I did meet with the council, and I'm leading up to that part of the story. But if I was to, it's my understanding as well that there are other areas in Inner Earth throughout the globe, and that Telos is just one of those. But if I was to characterize the area I saw, it wasn't military in any way. I don't know that this would have been hollowed out in any way that could have been done by any kind of human effort. There's a dimensional shift that they get to take advantage of, and the Lemurians have lived there that way for a while. Based on what research I could find online, the last time that there had been any type of surface contact with Lemurians, because they have a history back in the 40s and the 50s of actually coming into Mount Shasta and trading for the things that they needed and with gold. But there hadn't been any type of contact that I could find since the early 90s in a way that I had experienced it physically. Now, there are plenty of people that channel. I'm not channeling, that's not what I do, but I've certainly benefited from speaking with some of those people after my experience, just to find out, what happened to me and what kind of light can you shed on my experience. So let me go back to continuing the story, because after we finished looking over this area of the hydroponics and whatever crystal technology would assist the way that their crops grew, that we headed back up to the surface. And when we first came in, off to the right-hand side, you could tell that there was another round kind of temple there. The opening was exposed. And when we got on whatever you want to call this hovercraft, it landed there, and I could begin to see some etchings that were notched into the crystals that were there. Now, they looked oddly familiar to me because there's a shop in Mount Shasta called Blue Child Gallery. And Haruko is the proprietor there, and she does these amazing handwritten diagrams of what she calls different light codes. They looked exactly like her stuff. One was called the code for the new earth, and one was the new human blueprint. These were supposed to be representative of galactic codes for that light code, and how humans are changing and their DNA is changing. Here are the light codes that represent that. Well, when I saw them on the wall, I mentioned to Alex that they looked just like something I've seen in Mount Shasta. And he said, oh, yeah. Those were inspired here by Haruko. That's her work. Well, she had no idea. When I finished this, I went back. This was Sunday. I went to her shop immediately after I'd had this experience because I wanted to share it with her. Well, her shop was closed on Sunday, but I went back on Monday to kind of explain to her what had happened. And then to Bev over at the crystal shop so I could share with her, because to them, they weren't surprised that I'd had the experience that I had. As astounding as it would have been for me, not understanding, where I was going or what I was getting involved in, it was remarkable to me. So we entered into this room, and it is circular. It turns out that this is the council chambers. In the middle is a round wooden table that's just gorgeous. It has crystals inlaid into it, and around it are 13 chairs. There was something profound, though, about when you stepped into this room, in that there was an energy that was palpable, that you could feel it. I could feel it in my chest. There was like a radiation that came out of the crystal walls that felt like the most beautiful etheric hug you've ever had. I've been on an ayahuasca journey, and this was the same sensation that I got with just Mother Gaia just wrapping her arms around you. As Alex and I entered the room, 5 other people came in. One I recognized immediately. That was Adama. He was taller than the rest. And then there were 4 women that joined him as well. They took 3 seats on either side and invited me to sit down kind of in between them all. There was a woman. They each introduced themselves and kind of the role that they played. So Adama went first and indicated who he was, what role he played. And honestly, other than Alex, I'd be lying if I told you I could remember their names, with the exception of the woman that spoke first. Her name was Shyama. And the reason I remember that is during the discourse that took place next, she kind of chaired the meeting, to think of it in a way that is understandable for us. She explained to me that I was asked to come for 3 reasons. That I had demonstrated to their satisfaction, apparently, that I can hold 5th dimensional awareness. Number 2, that they understood that I was the protector of Gaia. And number 3 was that they believe that this shift in consciousness that the Earth is about to go through is going to happen around winter solstice this year. Their reaching out to me was to find out whether I would be open to the idea of being an emissary between the two, because they would love to be able to come back and integrate back with surface people. that they have technologies and resources that they wish to share with humanity, and that humanity also has some gifts and things that, although in our third dimensional awareness, we may not have been great stewards of Earth, but they saw that once humanity's consciousness was going to raise to a level that was consistent with theirs, that they would love to interact with us once again and share resources between them. Adama then said that the council was unanimous in this request, and that if I was interested in considering helping them be this emissary when the time came, that they would appreciate it.
Does that look like Adama that I'm showing there on the screen?
Well, he looks a lot better than that picture, but it's pretty accurate. He's tall. He's over 8 feet tall easily. And although, you know, when you look up at the tallest basketball players you've ever seen, this guy was all that and then some. But I'll tell you, the one thing that stood out about all of them is that however old they might be, and they don't have an existence like the rest of us humans do, they look ageless. They don't look like they've aged at all, but clearly their spirituality changes. His was definitely, he's the high priest. And so he probably represents 6th or 7th dimension, however those things are measured. But I know that there's a level at which you get to where your form changes, and maybe that is formless, but these were not that. Anyway, when I said yes, after, you know, well, the first thought was, you know, why me? Well, you never say those words out loud, but you always, of course, wonder, you know, how was it that I got chosen? So I had to kind of satisfy myself with the 3 answers that they gave me on the reasons why. But I was filled with gratitude, humility. The answer was yes. Well, as soon as I uttered the yes, our meeting was done. So they accomplished what it was that they wanted to accomplish. And they gave me enough of a tour for me to say that, yes, I was in Telos physically, and this place is legit. It's not a legend. It's a place that really exists, and they've been there for a lot longer than we have. But the good news to me, and I had this belief for some time now anyway, that knowing that there was a shift in consciousness coming to Gaia to raise her, or to Earth to raise her to Gaia, that something years ago had told me I was going to be here in this lifetime to participate somehow in the shift. What role I was going to play, who knew? I'm getting a better idea of what that means. But the fact that they also thought it was going to be in summer or winter solstice this year, that was the whole thrilling part of all this. Never mind that the experience itself was phenomenal, and I still can't articulate it as well as I probably should based on how fantastic what happened to me was. The more important message to me was that this shift is imminent and it's coming soon.
I'd like to say some things here. One of the things, folks, I think that's very, and actually gives credence to Lowell's story, is that he wasn't expecting this. And, you know, we talked, he and I talked about this. He thought maybe, because I said, you know, it's really nice that you're not like, you know, wearing crystals or a pyramid on your head like I do or something, and, you know, been a long time Telos person, that you were just a regular normal person and had a very unique experience. I think this lends credibility to his story. Now, Lowell and I, and he seems to be fairly metaphysically adept and understands things, certainly energetically, with this unique experience. I think they've chosen a very well-balanced personality to act as their emissary and representative, as my friend Louis Martens is also a representative from the South American area. And but one of the things we talked about I asked them, and they said they called it a solar event. And I'm going to want to bring this up real quick for the audiences. The Earth has a Schumann resonance. And if you can imagine, the Earth has a north and a south pole. The poles go like a magnet. So at the top, there's a hole and a hole, energetically speaking. And physically speaking, there's ocean there, but energetically, there's entrance into the inner dimension of the inner Earth. And I won't go into that whole thing, but one of the important things is that we understand that our bodies co-create and function in this electromagnetic spectrum with the resonance of the Earth, the Schumann frequency. She is our mother, or Gaia, as Lowell has said. And that when the astronauts went into outer space, this is not really known, but when the astronauts went into outer space, they had trouble acclimatizing without Earth's gravity. In fact, Edgar Mitchell told Fred Bell personally that when he went out, he was looking at the spaceship. He was pacing it outside of his body, and the same thing was taking place on Earth recently. And Lowell and I spoke about this. So the Schumann resonance is what kind of keeps our thing together. The astronauts had to be quarantined because of the shift in vibration that was taking place, because they were having emotional and mental problems. This is not known. This is one reason why they were quarantined after the ship, and of course to debrief them on the extraterrestrial spacecraft and the various things that they had seen while they were in outer space. But the shift in this frequency adjustment affects our thoughts and feelings. And so when everybody talks about activations and meditation and frequency shift, this is exactly true, exactly real. And the exact science and the interdimensionality of it, we don't really know or understand at this point in time. But I can tell you that this shift is coming. It's been coming gradually. The Earth's Schumann resonance used to be 7 to 8. Now it's hovering around 11 and 12. And one of the things that's taking place is the North and South Pole magnetically are shifting. The North Pole is somewhere over Greenland now. This is one of the causes for the melting of the ice caps and the preparation for the changes on Earth. This is in divine order. It's nothing to fear. Absolutely, mankind's technology does cause global pollution, but the poles are shifting and changing in frequency. We've had these incremental shifts or vibrations that the galactics are telling people that this is going to be happening, this is going to be happening. People meditate and these shifts happen. So to give you an understanding of the Earth changes that may be coming and over a period of time, is that when about a couple of days after my Mount Shasta conference, actually, the Schumann resonance spiked. It went up to 58, 68, even 71 over a period of weeks. And on one of the shifts, there was an earthquake in Chile at 11:11 UTC time, and then 13:13 UTC time, there was another earthquake in Argentina, and hundreds of earthquakes were triggered all around the world. And from my Inner Earth friend Louis Martens, this vibrational attunement or shifting that's taking place is going to recalibrate the Earth's ley lines or acupuncture lines into a harmonious frequency that will allow consciousness itself and the human being to either adjust to this new frequency, or if you resist this frequency, you can have a hard time. So one of the things that we have going on the Earth is this COVID. If people are living in fear, if you're using this time to meditate and to commune and to connect with your higher self, these frequency adjustments will have you reach a very high level of peace and contentment in yourself. If you haven't, people are weird about religion, but about spiritual energy that comes from the Creator through our galactic central sun, and then through our sun here on Earth. So this frequency adjustment is real. There's a scientific reality to it, and it's taking place. Now, Cobra has talked about the possible plans of the galactics, and as these frequencies are taking place, many of them are coming here and working with us and amongst us, and having more and more contacts with people like Lowell, myself, and others that are beginning to have more physical, direct physical contacts. And this isn't about silver spaceships or a personality talking about what they know. This is about an actual preparation for humanity to understand and to become prepared that we will be meeting our inner Earth neighbors, that we will be meeting our space family. They cannot do this until we achieve a level of peace. We have to have end homelessness, hunger, shelter, and clothe the people that need it. We need to have a representative government. We have to actually get off the money system and tell us there's no money. Everyone works in harmony with the universal law. So now I want to go into what Lowell and I talked, and he can maybe address this. And Alfred, you're pretty good on this. It's about the possible, he said that they said there might be a fifth dimensional ascension. And I was thinking, what was that? Because the Earth we're in third dimension. I don't really see the entire Earth shifting to the fifth dimension. I think this is an incremental shift over time. But, and Lowell, maybe you can add into this, but I postulated that this solar event could shift. It's going to activate people's DNA as constantly shifting with these new frequencies. And if this December 20th shift does have a profound effect, there are certain individuals who may have very unique experiences and opening up to the higher dimensions. And like you said, Lowell, that it was kind of like an ayahuasca journey. I was told by an Indian teacher, Fred Belt, that it was going to be kind of like a mushroom or LSD trip where you would start to feel and perceive other realities. And if you weren't grounded, it might become difficult. So this shift of frequency is going to be changing societal infrastructure. And if we hold on and try to cling on to the old money system, the way that we've been doing things, it's going to create chaos on our world. The more of us that can tune in and to work in a spirit of cooperation, the better. So one of the reasons I really wanted to bring Lowell on is because you have a large audience, Alfred, and also to let people kind of postulate on the possibility and to tune in and to the techniques, whatever they may be, or to open their hearts to a new vibration and what that means for the planet. So Lowell, if you could talk about what you were kind of intuiting, what you feel about this shift, it's this solar sneeze. Cobra says that it's going to initiate certain police force actions, but I'm not sure if that would happen, but
those are all, humanity's responses. So let me elaborate a little bit more on what I understand about the Schumann resonance, because there's actually science that now supports the idea that there's a shift in human consciousness that's coming. We have entered a place in our galactic year. Our solar system goes around our central sun, which is known as Alcyon. And Alcyon is right now, our solar system is passing through for the next 2,000 years, a section that gives us enhanced photon light energy that then comes and affects our sun, which affects all the planets in our solar system. If you've been watching the Schumann resonance, it is a measurement of that type of activity. And Robert had mentioned a couple instances where it had spiked. Well, I've monitored it, frequently. Now that I understand that there is a physical science behind what's taking place, I want to understand it better. that energy that is coming from Alcyon, that photon light energy that's hitting our sun and then dispersing through our area, that changes are taking place on a cellular level to Earth. And anything that resides on Earth is also being affected by these increases in frequency. I looked at it yesterday. The Schumann spiked at 51 yesterday. I looked at the day before. The Schumann spiked at 54 that day. Once the frequency of the planet can sustain itself from 40 to 100 hertz, we have achieved what I've been led to understand as fifth dimensional awareness. So that is just energy that keeps coming through the magnetic field that is around Earth. Every time another charge of that photon energy hits, this is what causes lightning around the poles. I thought many years ago that the aurora borealis was caused because of light refractions off the sun. It's not that at all. It's the manifestation of the electrical energies from that solar storms and things that are coming from our sun, and they hit and they just kind of bend around the planet and end up at the poles. Now, you talked about a pole shift, and I don't want to get too far off topic. I understand that that's possible.
I'd like to talk about the pole shift. My friend Raymond Keller, the Earth goes through a pole shift every 5,000 years. And
the last one was 764 years ago.
Well, magnetic shift, but I'm talking about...
No, I'm not talking about magnetic shift. I'm talking about poles are going to be inverted.
Right. Well, I'm talking about an axial flip that will cause large earthquakes and stuff. And
well, the earthquakes are caused by all of that electrical energy that we're going on. In addition to the Schumann resonance, I look at, there's a site that the USGS has that shows all the earthquake activity throughout the planet. There are hundreds of them a day. It's amazing.
Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of activity taking place, but I just wanted to clarify some things on the axial flip versus a pole shift. An axial flip takes place according to the Venusians, and they said it's not going to happen for several hundred years, not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But they did say that when that takes place, there will be very high solar maximums and solar minimums within a week, and eventually some of our electrical systems will not work out. I do not think that is going to be this event, that's going to be coming at this point in time, but it's possible. We don't know. One of the things I also wanted to say is that the shifting of the frequencies is a positive thing. It's a natural thing that's going to bring in the new vibration. Now I'm going to have to go here. We've got a little bit over, but it's really been an honor to have another show with you, Alfred and Lowell. I'm going to let you go on. I'd like to mention my website, thepromiserevealed.com. You can follow me on social media, and I'm going to be posting this. And I've been encouraging Lowell to perhaps begin writing a book about his experience, because I think the sincerity and the intelligence and his experience, the way he relates it, can really open up a lot of skeptical minds to this type of experience. So my website, thepromiserevealed.com, if you check it out. And Lowell's my friend on Facebook, folks. If you want to go to my personal page, you'd have to sign up under the Facebook page. But Lowell, you're probably going to get a lot of people who are going to want to friend and talk to you. And I really hope that this leads to an abundance of speaking engagements for you to share your wonderful story and experience. It's been an honor and a pleasure to introduce you to the people through Alfred. And we'll talk again. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the interview. But I have to go now. Thank you guys so very much. All right.
Rob, thank you very much.
God bless you.
Well, Alfred, let me finish. There's just two other things that I want to mention at the end of my trip in there, just so we can kind of bring it to a close.
Okay.
When that meeting was over and Alex took me back to the place where we had entered, there were two questions I had. And really, this was all the amount of the dialogue I'd had at all. And I first wanted to know, would I be able to return? The answer that I got was yes, you'll be able to return prior to the event. And number two, I wanted to know if it was going to be permissible for me to share my experiences with others. And they said, the fact that the council saw the shift as being imminent, they had no problem with me sharing my experience with anybody else. It wasn't going to be like anybody was going to be able to knock on the wall and go visit Telos. That's not how it happens. But they had seen no trouble with me sharing my experience with others.
Right, which brings us here. So this is you sharing this event, and what I find remarkable is that with our friends in Australia who deal with the indigenous there, I was at a conference with them, and they have their sacred mountain Uluru that's at the center. It's a mountain at the center of Australia, and they say that on 12/20/2020, there's going to be a massive consciousness shift.
Yes.
And it'll be, and that's the same, that's a congruent message that you received, is it not?
Yes, that's
From
winter
Telos.
solstice. You know, if you put it on the calendar and plotted it, that's the 21st of December.
Yeah.
So it's not unusual that there's a collective thinking that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I wonder if I could ask you a question, or maybe a couple of questions. When you were in the council room and the people were there, and you mentioned a Dhamma who was 8 feet tall, and we saw a rendition of him, and he looked like that. Were the other people, men and women, like that?
Yes.
The same?
There was nobody that
tall.
was shorter than I was.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were all kind of attired the same way. If I was to characterize them, they looked Scandinavian to me. They looked every bit human. They had the same numbers of feet and toes. They were just a lot taller than I was, but you could tell that their auras were different, that there was like a peace that just underlied everything, that there was a foundation of love within this civilization that just kind of made them all understand that we're all part of one greater thing, and their civilization lives it.
And so all of the communication was telepathic, was that it?
No.
Oh, no.
What I heard was articulated, and if I was to kind of characterize their voice, they had kind of a, if I called it British accent, that's how it sounded to me, although they were not British.
I see. So they were speaking to you in English.
Yes.
Interesting.
Any other questions?
Well, it's just sort of and so did they say anything that we Earthians should do in preparation for this?
No, you know, they've kind of kept this surface humans at arm's length for a while, and now I can appreciate the reasons why. I understand how their civilization lives. And they're not interested in an influence from a third dimensional perspective that is going to drag their energy into lower vibrations. I totally get that.
Yeah.
You just felt so good being in that environment. I understand that we're all energy, and you know, we're kind of our soul is packaged up in an energetic form, but there was a different energy in there, and it was just peaceful, tranquil, and serene, and there wasn't really any reason for discourse.
Now, how can people who are watching this, do you have a website or some?
I do. I've been starting to document some of this information. It's a 40,000 foot view, but the website is 40kftview.com.
Could you say that again?
40
40 K
FT
FT.
VIEW.
I see. 40,000footView.com.
That's it.
Very good. And I'll ask for you. Do you have an email on there?
Yes, but you
Okay.
can send it to Lowell, LOWELL dot Johnson, JOHNSON at outlook.com.
Okay. Very good. Well, do you have any sort of words that you'd like to leave our audience with, or?
I will answer the first question that everyone else has asked me for your entire audience. And no, I don't know how to get to Telos. And no, I don't know that I could take you with me. I would love to be able to do that. And maybe that day will come. I still am blessed in ways I can articulate as to how this happened for me, but I'm glad that it did, and it's time for me to share. Because really, if this is going to manifest itself winter solstice this year, the clock is ticking, and people need to know what had happened.
Right. How exciting, huh?
It is. As I learn new things, and I've been on my spiritual journey now for a while, new concepts are wonderful, but they always take a few days at least for me to assimilate what that really means. And as time goes on, things just get put in more perspective on what happened and the results of my experience.
Well, I hope that you will return to Exopolitics TV, and that as events develop, as we get closer to we're almost there, but
Yes.
afterward and in the consciousness shift and subsequently.
I will be happy to do that. When I know that I get to visit again, you'll be one of the first calls, Al. I promise.
Thank you so much.
Namaste, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.